The dark cloud of cultural Marxism cannot obscure the light of the U.S. Constitution. Dowley's Reasoning, Episode 3. The United States has been a respected country historically. In the last century, it defeated the German and the Japanese fascists, won the Cold War against the Soviet Union, and established the most powerful economy in the world. It is only natural that countless people around the world flock to the United States. But since the Biden administration came to power in less than one term, it has ruined a prosperous and confident United States beyond recognition. As far as the domestic situation is concerned, the border is out of control, prices are soaring, and criminals are rampant. It is stunning how educational standards continue to deteriorate, while common sense and moralities decline. It is heartbreaking to watch a prosperous country with law and order descending into chaos. What is even more worrying is its prospects. That is, how bad the United States can become going forward. The absurdities, stupidities, and insanities created by the extreme left in political and cultural arenas continue to emerge, and there seems to be no end. A recent example is that a prosecutor and a judge in New York State actually inherited the mantle of Beria, the notorious prosecutor of the Stalinist Soviet Union. You gave me a person's name, and I can find his crime. People can't help but think of the ancient Chinese saying, if you are out to condemn someone, you can always trump up a charge. The alleged basis for Trump's conviction was that he overstated the value of his assets when seeking loans from banks. The judge by the name of Engoron said that the tax value of Mar-a-Lago was assessed at $18 million US. But Trump quoted $1 billion when he borrowed money from the bank. This sounds shocking, but anyone who has lived in the United States for a while can easily understand that things are not that simple. First, the number assessed by the government agencies for tax purposes and the actual market value of the property are not the same thing. The former is much lower than the latter. Property taxes and house prices, car taxes and car prices are only examples. The most critical point is that the valuation of a loan as collateral depends on how much the lender believes it is worth. Business goodwill and brand both have values. Based on Trump's popularity, banks gave him large loans because they were willing and because they knew they could make money. As we all know, in order to award fines and compensation, there must be a victim. But here is a win-win situation. There are no victims here. This is ordinary people's understanding of legal provisions. It is based on common sense of a free economy and convention of mutually beneficial transactions. This is the concept of natural law. But here comes the problem. Natural law is based on common sense and morality. But nowadays, cultural Marxism is rampant in the United States. Even the difference between men and women has become a subject of debate. College admissions are not based on grades. Stealing less than $1,000 is not considered a crime. Can you still expect that most cases be judged according to ordinary sensible understanding, like in the past? So the question is this: is natural law alone enough? Here we enter the center topic of this article. In the United States, where the dark clouds of cultural Marxism are gathering, people can still see a ray of light. This is almost a unique phenomenon in the United States. To illustrate this point, let us first take a look at what happened in Britain, a symbol and representation of modern democracy. Konstantin Kisin is a Russian-British writer. He mentioned on John Anderson's show at the end of 2022 that in Russia the year before, 400 people were arrested for posting on social media. He asked Anderson, "Do you know how many people were arrested in the UK that year for their comments on social media?" When Anderson heard that the answer was 3,000, he was so surprised that he couldn't believe it. Kisin gave an example of a 19-year-old young woman from Liverpool whose friend had died in a car accident, and she posted the lyrics to his favorite song on Instagram, which was a rap song, and the N-word appears several times in the lyrics. So she was arrested, charged, found guilty, sentenced to 500 hours of community service plus a fine, and subject to an 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. curfew for a year. In another example, a Scottish YouTuber pulled a prank to deliberately annoy his girlfriend. This girlfriend has a pug and thinks this dog is the cutest thing in the world. So the boyfriend had a whim, and in order to turn the dog into the most terrifying thing, he trained the dog to give a Nazi salute and posted it on YouTube. The video went viral overnight, racking up 3 million views in a week. He was arrested, found guilty, and fined £800. When the story was reported in the newspapers, he could legally be called a Nazi hate criminal. It must be noted that in the United States, although the restrictions on free speech imposed by left-controlled media and institutions have been severe in recent years, they are generally not formal government actions. People who speak out against critical race theory, against Black Lives Matter violence, against the gender reassignment of minors, etc., have been suppressed to varying degrees, but there is no practice of arrests just for these remarks. The fundamental reason is that the founding fathers of the United States were far-sighted and formulated a series of human rights bills more than 200 years ago. The most famous ones are the First Amendment, which protects freedom of speech, and the Second Amendment, which protects the people's rights to own guns. The law always has limitations. There are always gray areas. And it always depends, to a certain extent, on the judgment of the persons responsible, such as a judge or jury. If too much space is left for interpretation, the law will become unnecessarily arbitrary and then lose its due seriousness and legitimacy. The Constitution is an overriding framework to which other laws must conform in principle. Therefore, some very important issues, such as human rights, should be clarified through amendments at the level of the Constitution. So there will be little loophole for some local judges with ulterior motives to exploit. Think about it. Without the First Amendment, wouldn't Americans' mouths be sealed just like the British? If there were no Second Amendment, wouldn't the guns of the Americans be taken away just like in Australia? If this is the case, it would not only be a matter of gangsters robbing the store, but your life and safety at home would also be in question. Finally, let's go back to Trump's punishment. The most important thing here is the Eighth Amendment to the United States Constitution, which states fines shall not be excessive. We already discussed the reason why the verdict is not justified. Even if a fine were allowed, it should not be an astronomical figure of $400 million. Just 4 years ago, there was a case in which the U.S. Supreme Court rejected by 9-0 a state court's decision to confiscate a Land Rover worth more than $40,000 owned by a defendant. The defendant had contraband found in his car, but as a rule, the maximum fine was $10,000. Therefore, even the most left-leaning Justice Ginsburg felt that the fine decided by the state court was excessive and violated the Eighth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. There is an English proverb, every cloud has its silver lining. Trump has appealed the New York judge's decision, and the Supreme Court has agreed to a hearing. There are provisions of the U.S. Constitution and Supreme Court cases based on the Constitution that can be invoked as precedents as well. This is called case law. We wait to see what the outcome will be, with some degree of optimistic expectations. Thanks for listening, liking, subscribing, and sharing.